Welcome. Welcome to another episode of the impact of AI and big data. Today I have special guest, Susan Walsh. Susan works with dirty data, works with spend classification, works with procurement. And even back in 2020, 2021, there was a lot of questions in the industry. How is AI going to impact this? Is Susan's job going to go away because AI is going to automate it? And, 3, 4 years ago, we didn't really have a clear enough understanding. So today I've asked Susan to come back and finish that conversation 3 years later.
Thanks for having me back.
Would you like to introduce yourself? Because
Yeah,
you can do so much better job than me.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Walsh, the classification guru, fixer of dirty data. This is my data den, as it's known. I am based out of the UK, originally from Scotland, now living in England, just outside London. And I've had the classification guru as a business for almost 7 years now, which again has gone by so fast, and also some slow at the same time. Since we last spoke, I now have a team. I had 7 people at one point. I'm down to 5 of us now. And yeah, I help clients normalize their suppliers, classify their spend data, build customized taxonomies. Since we've spoken, I'm also helping with vendor master cleaning, material master cleaning. We've done a lot of CRM systems as well. So pretty much, yeah, anything that needs is a bit more than just a basic, super easy clean. Something that's a bit trickier, that needs a bit of puzzle solving. That's what we do.
So I don't want to downplay that your role is not important. And I say that because, I've been in a similar field, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. When I worked with Carney back in 1999, that was my job. Worked in the data management group. And even then, procurement, spend analytics, normalization, classification was important. So what's been interesting in following that from 1999 to 2024 is that it's a foundational element that is so critical that it's often overlooked.
Yeah.
Everyone often forgets that this is the most fundamental element.
Yeah.
But where we had started our conversation 3 or 4 years ago was, how is AI going to impact this?
Yeah.
Companies out there that claim that now that they've had 4 years to work and develop on automation of classification, you give them your data, they will come back in a couple of weeks with a.
I'm going to stop you right there.
Yep.
If it's AI and it's automated, why is it taking them a couple of weeks? If it truly is automated, you should have that back in days.
Okay.
I would say.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're talking.
Yeah.
I wanted to get your perspective because you're one of the few individuals that this is your bread and butter. This is what you do day in and day out. And you must be getting the same questions from some of your potential clients. How are you differentiating yourself between all these other people out there who say they can do it better, faster, stronger with an AI tool? And that's what I want to dig into today.
Yeah, you're spot on there. And something I say quite a lot is data cleaning, or people who are involved in data cleaning, we're like the trash people of the data world. If your trash wasn't collected on a weekly basis, like literally society would fall apart. There would be disease, there would be chaos, it would be an absolute nightmare. And if you don't clean your data, the same thing happens within your organization. But at the same time, it's a job nobody wants to do. It's always someone else's problem to fix or deal with. And so I think that's where a lot of the issues stem from, and that's why it's not seen as an important task as it should be. But also, I think when it comes to AI, well, first, most importantly, AI learns from training data sets. And if those data sets are not clean, then it's going to learn bad habits. It's going to populate data sets with bad data, incorrect data. And so I feel like you're always going to need that element of a person at the very beginning, at the minimum, to verify the data is correct or not before it goes into AI for cleaning and training, etc. And I think I probably said to you 3 years ago, if somebody had nailed this and built the tool, everybody would know its name by now. Everybody would be using it, but everybody's using different tools, different processes, different things. And I think the reality is that there's always going to be a mixture of tech and people. And because people say they use AI, what they don't say is what percentage of the project they use AI in. It could be 10 or 20%. The rest could be done by people. You don't know if you don't ask the question. I think the difference with us is I'm upfront and say we are a people-based business that use a little bit of automation in the background to support us. But when you're looking at files for the first time, it's so important to go through it by eye and just pick up where there's patterns and trends, things that a tool can't tell you. Things like you might see, I don't know, just something that is specific to the business that tech wouldn't pick up on, like, a trend, like one of my clients had fruity Fridays in the office, and then you can tell that they look after their staff from that. Now, tools can't tell you that. It might not mean much, but it's insights like that are different. And the kind of projects that we work on are the projects that tech struggles with. So if you are using a spend analytics tool and you're in a pretty generic industry, there will be a lot that you can auto classify without much issue. But we've been working a lot with, say, in the manufacturing space or shipbuilding or food and beverage, where you need detailed classification, and you can't always get that information by using AI. It might involve a lot of research of companies, for example, or products or words in the description. And so that's where we're different, but we tend to be kind of one and done. We get everybody set and up and running so that they can use tech. We're not against it, but we're just really pro making sure your data's clean before you use the tech.
So I'm going to clarify, because we're using the term AI, which is quite ambiguous. So
Yeah.
here within this topic, when we say the word AI, we're really focused on machine learning, maybe some deep learning, natural language modeling, what you said,
Yeah.
finding patterns, grammar-based language. So
Yeah.
I do want to clarify that for
Yeah,
anyone
and even
listening.
GPT. So we've looked at that.
Okay.
That is, we have seen some in the same data set, some very good and some very bad results. And so at that point, you'd have to run it, and then you'd have to get people to go through the file again. So I'm of the opinion it's just as efficient to start from scratch with people and do the whole thing until it gets to a point where it's 90% accurate.
Okay.
Why?
I'm gonna separate something you said earlier. I'm gonna separate and talk about indirect data versus direct data.
Right.
So indirect data is where a lot of these tools have really focused on for the last, say, 15, 20 years. But as you mentioned, I know of several tools that take the spend data, come back, and have an engine that parses through the data, finds the patterns, classifies it. Here's that row of data, and here's the UNSPSC that I've classified it to. I've normalized your suppliers. IBM spelled 15 different ways. Here's how it needs to be spelled. Most of this has been focused on indirect data, but I think what you've highlighted in these tools is that when they come back, it still requires users from the company to review the data based on the confidence level that has been provided by the tool. And most companies will prioritize, I'm going to start with, the medium confidence level. Don't worry about the high or very highs, work on the medium confidence level, validate that, what you've said, set the rules so that the next time the data is processed, it bumps it to a high confidence level. And then most of the lows, from what I've seen, nobody really ever focuses on because it's so many of them.
So much opportunity in that area because, yes, you look at an individual line and value of that line, but when you work on all those lines and combine the value of potential savings and opportunities in there, it could be huge.
On the items that have been automatically classified to
Yeah,
the
or
UNSPSC, but with very low confidence.
yeah, or I have seen many times unclassified as a classification. And so
Yes.
a whole load of stuff just gets put in the unclassified bucket and just stays there and never gets looked at. So it's important to actually we always classify 100% of the file no matter how long it takes, because I truly believe that what's in the tail is just as important as the high spend. There could be so much more going on in your tail spend that indicates things like fraud or buying from multiple suppliers when you don't need to. We had a project once where we classified 4,000 suppliers in Asia, just a name and just the country. And once we finished that project, the client found out they had 1,000 consultants on their supplier list. And they then started a huge project to go through and get rid of most of those. And they would never have known that had they not had some visibility. But again, that data was so minimal, there's no way the AI would have been able to look at that. And because also, if you just do a straight Google Translate, you get some of the Chinese translations are crazy. You get Shanghai Technology Company, PwC, and actually it's PwC, but there's a lot of words around it. So, you need to be able to go through and filter those things. Yeah. On direct and indirect side, there are some areas where AI is great. So if you're looking at MRO, loads of parts, AI is great for that. Same with a lot of medical and laboratory equipment and technology. It's pretty good with that too. But then there's other areas where it's just so far off being able to get anywhere close to. If you're okay with a level 1 or 2 classification, then great. But if you need something in more detail, then it needs a bit more of a human touch.
So if I'm listening to this and I'm trying to figure out what I should be doing with my spend, are we saying that if you're looking mostly at indirect and you're good with like 1 or 2 classification and maybe you want a few people from your company to review it, then yeah, go out and buy the tool. Is that, or go out and not buy the tool, but service the tool, get the tool.
Yeah, if it's a large amount of data and you are okay with that, then that tool will do an okay job.
Right.
But if you're a bit of a perfectionist like me, then that's not going to satisfy your needs.
Okay. And then,
but again, it's not a whole blanket thing, because I can guarantee there are some areas where it is exceptionally accurate and actually could do a better job than people, especially if you've got like information like part numbers, and then you can find that, there will be pockets where it's more beneficial.
And then on the direct side, you mentioned manufacturing, that this tends to be where you're focused on at the moment. But it sounds like because there's so much data, so much ambiguity, that these tools, these automation tools, aren't really doing the job.
Yeah. And again, it's not clear-cut black and white classification. There's a lot of context or knowledge involved in the classification. I've seen that before, where we've reclassified other spend analytics tools classification because it was like a lumber company and it was so unique and specialized. You just needed a person to go through it.
if this is a human-based company and you're going through the data and you've completed the project, there's a perception that, hey, I had someone do this and this is great, but I had someone do this once, then now what? Does everything just go back the way it was?
Oh, you're right. And the biggest kind of secret, or not so secret, is data maintenance. So I have said many times to clients, there's no point in doing this if you're not going to maintain your data, because you'll be back to where you were within a year. Now, also, we do work with a lot of smaller companies where maybe they only need to look at it every 6 to 12 months, and that's not such a problem for them. But it's hard to get budget for this kind of thing first time round, let alone for maintenance and regular working on it, which is unfortunate.
What's your definition of maintenance?
So maintenance would be checking your existing data regularly to make sure that it's still accurate, as well as classifying any new spend that's come in. So we do some quarterly refreshes for some clients. Depending on how much data you have and how often you look at it will depend on how often you need to refresh it. But if you want to stay up to date with trends, for example, and we saw this off the back of COVID, spend changed dramatically. And so if you want to really know what's going on in your business right now, you need to be looking at it monthly or quarterly. Looking at last year will tell a different picture to what's going to happen this year.
I'm going to go back and ask the question again. The
Okay.
definition of maintenance.
Yeah. So the definition of maintenance for me is to make sure that you are continually looking at your data, making sure it's still correct, because it might have been right last month. It doesn't mean it's going to be right again today. And it's also about updating new data that comes in. So, for example, we do refreshes for clients on a quarterly basis. So we classify and normalize any new data that comes in. And that is, for me, is maintenance. It's and checking it regularly, because the more often you check your data, the easier it is to spot mistakes. And so it makes the whole process a lot easier.
I've gone through this process, this human-based process, which again, I think we're recognizing that there's pros and cons, but it also depends on the individual and the company and where they are in the maturity. So you've done this project, you've walked away, you've given them instructions on how to maintain it. Taking the data set that you've put together, I'm assuming that there's some sort of, and I don't want to use the word rules, but there's something there that when new data comes in, they can validate it against the baseline of the data that you've cleansed.
Yeah, we can give them master lists that they can use to help them update their data with existing data that's been classified. We really don't use rules for classification here at TCG, and I know a lot of places do. We really do go through with people by eye and we'll do keyword searches, but we will not have like coding rules or anything like that. It's because I think if you are in an organization and you're looking at the same data day in, day out, year on year, then you can absolutely build rules for your data because it's not changing. But for us, every week we're working in a different industry with different rules and so we can't blanket put rules on, because each industry has its own set of rules for one supplier in one industry could be classification A, but in another industry it could be classification B.
So rules here I'm referencing would be like an if then else. That would be a really basic foundational rule.
Yeah. Okay. We don't do it.
Right. I had to ask because I know that there are companies that do that, and that's why I wanted to try to stay away from the word rules, because not everybody uses like the straight if then else. If your AP data field says X, and if this says Y, and if this says Z, then the UNSPSC is 1, 2, 3.
And let's not even get started on the UNSPSC, because that's a whole other conversation.
I used to be a member of the UNSPSC org.
Ah,
Yeah. Yeah. I
I like
was,
the fact you said used to.
yeah. um, it was very eye-opening. If you're, I would recommend that if you're someone like yourself, like Susan, who really works in data, who really works in spend, go be a member, for a couple years and really understand the back end nuances, which is, I would say, very eye-opening.
Imagine it, like they're trying to be everything to everyone, and they hit the mark in some areas and not in others.
Yeah.
I definitely have seen a move over the last few years. Pretty much every classification project we do now, we build a customized taxonomy for the client. That's
Yeah.
the way it's going.
Yeah. So I've seen where in the past classifying to the UNSC makes sense, but it doesn't make sense when it comes back to reporting.
Yeah, like level one, it's like, why is I've done a kind of document, like, why you should customize versus UNSPSC, and it's certain things like in marketing, certain spend sits under one level one, and certain
Mhm.
marketing spend sits on under a different level one. And
Right.
so it can be confusing if you're trying to track it.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, a lot of people who are using it are using years old versions. They're not even necessarily using I've had people come to me and go, have you got a version of the UNSPSC you can slip me? And I'm like, well, I've got one, but it's old, it's not up to date.
Right. Well, I'm going to come back and ask. What I find is that there's a classification to the UNSPSC, then there's a mapping table in the back end, and the mapping table has some level of a customized procurement taxonomy that's more related to what the procurement people are reporting on. And
Yeah,
that's what you're talking about.
and we see this, I think Coupa and also SAP
Yeah, they do that
both
now.
both run off of the UNSPSC. So as much
Yeah.
as you want to escape from it, you can.
Well, so the UNSPSC has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
It's a United Nations, so it's a global standard. And if you're looking at pulling catalogs, getting the catalogs from vendors, when you pull that data in, it automatically has a UNSPSC a tag to that value. So you're already getting UNSPSC from the suppliers. Oh, I hit
Yes.
something. Yeah.
But when did they last update their data? How accurate is it? That's the other thing.
Okay, so then that brings, okay, very valid.
Sorry, I'm taking you
Why
down
is,
this whole
I
wormhole.
know, okay, one more question on the UNSPSC. So if I'm taking data that's okay, supplier has given me a catalog with items, and
Mhm.
each item they've classified to a UNSPSC.
Yeah.
And that's come in and I've mapped it to my reporting. Why is it an issue that they have an old map, an old UNSPSC value?
It's not so much that as, say you're buying that same item from a different supplier
Mm-hmm.
and they have put a different UNSPSC code. So I'll give you a really great example.
Mm-hmm.
Business cards. So I always put business cards under the printing services option in the UNSPSC because you're buying the printed business card from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But some people will put business card under paper because which is just the blank business card. Now, but for a printed business card. So people, you can there's no consistency. And that's not the only area where you can have more than one right answer in the UNSPSC.
Okay,
I mean, in
so
fact, you
yep.
could even have someone update the same supplier's data, but different people have done it, and it's subjective. Or it could be, like you say, things get added and removed. So, there could be a better option in the UNSPSC in the newer version. I mean, I'm constantly complaining about marketing because the options are terrible.
So go become a member of the UNSPSC org, sign up for, you can sign up to be a member of certain segments. And
Yeah.
the value of that is that you can vote on all those things that we just talked about.
Okay.
But I think that's part of, I
Yeah.
mean, the concept is that it's a group of people
Yeah.
globally that are creating these, but
Yeah.
then that's the disadvantage. It's a group of
Yeah.
people
And
globally
actually, yeah,
creating these.
there's no point in me complaining about it if I don't actually try and do something about it. But I think
Well,
that's all of our responsibility
yeah,
as well.
that was the primary reason I became a member, is I was having the same similar things. But you hit on something that I think I just, connected the dots on. The UNSPSC, the way it's divided is the bottom half is the tactical, I bought the phone, and the top half is the service, the telephone service. Going back to your business cards, I could easily see somebody defining it as the business card, the tactical component of it. But then I could also see somebody classifying it as the service, because I purchased business cards from a third party as a service.
Yeah, I've had almost disagreements. Like I'm saying, but you know, you put it under printing services
Mhm.
because you're not paying for just the print. You get the business card too.
Right, right.
Um, but at the end of the day, if everything is classified the same way, then it's much easier to change. It's
Yes.
it's when you have mixed classification that there's problems. And that if you're taking that data set and using it to train some AI or machine learning,
Mhm.
if that's in there, it's going to confuse the learning.
So now, again, the concept of AI is that you have the data, you're using the data to train the AI models, but if it's really a logic issue, you're saying that, well, at this point in the data, it was a business card, but at this point in the data, it was something else, and at this point in the data, it was something else. So then, how do you explain to the model which one was the most accurate one and go back and change the others?
So I'd start with a clean training data set with one option in there.
Okay.
So let's just say it is business cards. There will be one classification and it will be printing services business cards. And then use that as a training data set. And
Mhm.
then the AI would learn from that and should overwrite any existing data with the new classification. But you'd have to retrain it.
Which then comes back to the maintenance.
Yes.
Yes, because one of the things that we've learned over the last couple of years is the data drift. The drift between I've trained the model, it's now being used in my commercial product or service, and then over time there's a data drift or a gap between that
Yeah.
point, how the data is being used, how the consumers consuming the data,
Yeah.
and then suddenly what the model was designed for needs to be updated. So now you
Yeah.
have to go back, and that's part of that maintenance.
Yeah, and I can give you a great example. We are
Mhm.
working on building a normalization tool, and we had certain, I guess, rules in there because it's supplier names, it's not
Mhm.
classification. So we started to take out things like and co that might be at the end of a company name.
Okay.
But actually, as it turns out, there are a lot of businesses that and co is part of the business name, so you can't blanket remove those things.
Mhm.
There are suffixes at the end, like you have to be so careful with ink, because if you just remove ink, that comes out of all the inks in all the words, and then you end up with misspelled words and everything. So
Mhm.
there are ways and processes, but I think ultimately all of this comes down to actually having some knowledgeable people who are able to check the output, who can tweak the model and improve it. And I think that's where the gap is missing. There are so many people out there who can build the most phenomenal models that could do amazing things, but nobody really knows how to check it to know if it's right or wrong, or knows who to ask.
Mhm.
And I think that's where we're falling down most.
So I'm going to summarize this conversation. What I've heard is, yes, there are, and I'm going to use the word AI technologies, but we've defined that earlier. There are AI technologies out there. There are applications that are leveraging this. now today it is a combination of technology, but still a very human touch
I think so.
industry. And someone like you is leveraging that technology, but it's still not, we're still not 100% dependent on it. And even if we were, we couldn't be 100% dependent on it when it comes to the maintenance and the ongoing updates and the new data that gets pulled in.
Yeah, and I would say actually it's also partly me. I have very high standards when it comes to accuracy, and there are many people out there who would be more than happy to accept a lower level of accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
But not on my watch, not in this business.
I like that. I think this is good. I think we've come to at least a conclusion. Um, I I'm gonna reserve that we need to come revisit this. Maybe not 4 years from now, which I still can't
No,
believe it's been that long, or 3 years
I
from
know.
now. But with tools changing so quickly, I think it'd be interesting to come back to this in like 2 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, one of my last thoughts would be I'm still in business and my team is here and we're growing. So I am not concerned about the future of the classification guru. I think there's a place for everybody because, you know, everyone needs something different.
Actually, I think you probably summarized it even better. If this was all fixed, and if there was a solution that did this, why is your company still in business, and why is your company growing in business? I think that speaks volumes in itself right there.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks so
Talk to you
much.
later. Bye.
Bye.